Hi, you're listening to When Isabel Met Aviva, a podcast about rom-coms, female-driven screenwriting, and how to break into the entertainment industry. I'm Isabel.
And I'm Aviva.
And welcome to the next episode of our pod.
Yeah. Welcome back, everyone. So today we're not interviewing a creative necessarily, although we can ask.
Yeah.
But we're interviewing an entertainment lawyer, which is something we wanted to do for a while.
Yeah, we think this will be helpful for all of you, as we assume it will be helpful for us too, right? Because there's definitely a lot of questions that come up about legality of like ownership of your script, ownership of a script when you're writing on spec, and just like when you're first breaking in, like what kind of paperwork or agreements or contracts should you sign. I guess this is interesting because we both kind of are breaking in at the same time, and I feel like you had an agreement, right, when you first started, got your first opportunity, and I don't. And I honestly had no idea to even, I guess it never even crossed my mind. So like looking back on it, I think it would have been helpful to have known something like this.
We just have a lot of questions about contracts and maybe copyright, and just we'll see where the conversation goes. This one's a little bit out of our wheelhouse. But I do, throughout like trying to break in, I've heard the sentiment, not everyone, but I've heard the sentiment like, all you need is an entertainment lawyer. You don't even need a manager, like things like that. So I'm curious if that's true for some people. I think it is.
Yeah.
I think we've even interviewed people who've said that.
So today we're going to be talking to Hillary Hughes, who is an entertainment lawyer, and we just have a lot of questions, and hopefully this will be an insightful episode for all of you to learn about, what you should be thinking about when you start breaking in and start writing for other people or selling your own scripts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's invite her in and start chatting. Okay, awesome. So we have Hillary here, and thank you so much for chatting with us today.
My pleasure. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to begin, I would just love to know generally like what an entertainment lawyer does. That might seem like a silly question, but like I think for myself and some of our listeners, we maybe just like don't even quite know what entertainment law looks like, and if there's like a specific type of specialty law or something that that you specialize in.
Yeah, I think that I can't answer that question for the whole profession, right? Because
Yeah.
there are full service entertainment lawyers or entertainment practices, and then there are entertainment lawyers that specialize just in music or TV and film or, literary journalism, that sort of thing. So I think it's a pretty broad field.
Yeah.
But typically entertainment lawyers are at their core some sort of intellectual property lawyer, because most of the rights that are involved, and then some, sprinkling of business law in there too. You've got to be a good negotiator. You've got to have a sense of what's market, and understand how the industry and the business works, because that typically drives a lot of the decision making. But entertainment lawyers tend to either be what I would call talent side or more on the corporate entertainment side. So on the talent side, it's representing, music artists, songwriters, music producers, actors, reality TV personalities, screenwriters, folks who write for television, journalists, celebrity chefs. It's really this full spectrum. And then that's on the talent side. And then on the more corporate side of entertainment, it would be lawyers who are representing the corporate players in the industry. So it might be a film studio or a record label, a television network, a sports organization. So entertainment lawyers tend to be a talent side or more on the corporate side, but there are folks who do a mix. So our practice on the entertainment side tends to be on the talent side, but we do some in the corporate arena. We have some independent record label clients, some film and TV production company clients. We represent consumer brands that often bring on, sports or entertainment talent to be endorsers or influencers for their brand. So we kind of see a little bit of both, but I'd say the bulk of our entertainment work is on the talent or creative content side of things.
Yeah,
Interesting.
interesting. And for writers, what is your relationship like with a screenwriter, for example, contracts? And yeah, what is your responsibility in that arena?
Sure. Yeah. Mostly it's contracts, right? When they get the opportunity to have their script purchased or an option on it. It's also copyright protection as well, which I think is something you should always be thinking about if you create content. Um, I would say that's the bulk of it, and anything ancillary to that. Sometimes where a screenwriter who's successful will have a publicist, and we may help with PR matters. To the extent there's a legal component to it, onboarding, of course, agents, managers, that sort of thing. Kind of understanding what's going on with the guild and guild agreements. The kind of sort of general counseling, answering questions as they come up.
I'm kind of curious, like at what stage in, a writer's career do you recommend that they speak to a lawyer or even have a lawyer? Because I think that's something we all sort of wonder all the time is like we often write our own scripts and we'll submit them to, contests or film festivals and like you can register a copyright, right? Like online. Should you always do that for a script or like at what point do you feel like a writer should have an entertainment lawyer like, you know, on their side, I guess, is like something we probably think about a lot.
Yeah, I think I'm going to break that up into two questions because there are two
Okay.
pieces to that. One was kind of the copyright registration, and one was sort of utilizing when to utilize a lawyer.
Mhm.
I think that, well, let's do the copyright first because a lot of times you can handle copyright matters as a screenwriter on your own and don't need a lawyer. But most commonly, there's the traditional or official registration of copyright in something through the Library of Congress, the Copyright Office, which can be done, as you said, online. But we tend to encourage our screenwriter clients that we work with to also register their scripts with WGA. It's low cost. I mean, there's a fee for members, and there's a slightly larger fee for non-members, but it's an easy way to do it. And I think the registration or the records are kept for at least 5 years. It's a good way to sort of kind of mark your territory that you were the one who created it. Ideally, you would register it with the WGA before you go out and submit it, because then there's a clear timeline, a clear record of who created it and when before you gave broader access to it. So that's probably the most advisable and easiest way to do it. Also, federal copyright registration is low cost. I mean, it's a little bit more expensive than registering with the WGA, but doesn't hurt to do it. You get, some additional protections when you register in the Copyright Office. So we tend to recommend both since they're fairly low cost and fairly easy processes. For you working with a lawyer, typically we don't see screenwriters until they are getting their first kind of meaty or material deal, and then they feel like, I should consult a lawyer, which I think is always a good thing to do. So that's typically the entry point for us. It doesn't mean we won't work with folks, before they get a deal, but that's the most common entry point for when they think, well, maybe I should consult a lawyer. Many entertainment lawyers work on a percentage fee basis, which is standard in the industry to charge 5% of what the talent earns in the industry, rather than charging an hourly rate or, a fixed fee per project, although certainly entertainment lawyers will work on that basis too. But because the percentage fee model is, most common, it it's a chicken egg type situation, right? Because it's hard to get a lawyer to, just like same for an agent or manager, to take you on if you're not yet earning enough that that percentage is meaningful or covering expenses or covering time. So I think that is often a gating issue to figure out. Am I hiring a lawyer on a percentage fee basis, and am I making enough here to to generate a fee, a meaningful fee for them? Or are they, sometimes entertainment lawyers will work with kind of emerging or new talent before they've gotten a big deal, because they like to help and support people just starting out in the industry. We do some of that as well. And sometimes it's just a good way to get in early and support, somebody who's early in their career, with the hope that they get more successful and their star will rise and, they will generate, more in legal fees down the road. So I think it's just finding the right fit, at the point in time that it feels safe, the right time in your career where you're going to start to have an increase in deal activity or a larger deal if it's a single deal.
We have heard the sentiment. I don't know if we've had anyone on the podcast say this, but I've read this in books and other interviews and things that sometimes they say you don't, like for a screenwriter trying to break in, you don't need a manager or an agent. All you need is an entertainment lawyer to submit things, submit. It might depend on the entertainment lawyer, but what are your thoughts around that? Is that true that they can kind of act as a manager, or is that strange?
I wouldn't call it acting as a manager,
Yeah.
but we've definitely been asked to, and have done some submissions. We tend to prefer to do that with somebody we know a little bit or feel comfortable with, or we've looked at their work and it's not weird or unusual or really bad. Just because we in doing a submission, we're putting kind of our brand behind it. That is common practice as well, to have an attorney submit. So some people do, some people don't do that. So I think it just depends on the attorney.
Yeah. Because a lot of places, when you're cold querying, won't accept unsolicited submissions. So it's kind of confusing how to break in.
That's true. Many places won't. Yeah.
Yeah. I've gotten emails back from when I've cold queried and it says, we have not read this. We're automatically deleting it.
Right. We don't accept unsolicited material. Yeah.
Exactly.
Not unusual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wonder too, is it typical for a writer to have an agent, a manager, and a lawyer? And then is everybody taking 5% of your income?
Oh, they take lawyers are the bottom of the barrel in terms of percentage. It is for successful screenwriter, sure. But when you're, kind of just starting out in your career, I would say it's unusual to have an agent and sometimes, early to have a manager. Again, some of these are sort of, I keep saying chicken and egg, but that's what they are, because the managers and the agents don't get paid, but a percentage of what you make. And so if you're not making anything, it's hard to get somebody to take you on. You almost have to find somebody who themselves is just starting out or building their own brand as a manager or agent. And so they want to, take on folks who don't have anybody yet and that they can try to build. So it's hard until you have some success to get an agent or a manager. You probably get a lawyer before you get an agent or a manager. And that's
Yeah. I feel like let's just like talking to you now, I think to me it would make more sense to talk to a lawyer first, because most writers I feel like for most people breaking in, right, you're either going to be like you have a really amazing script that somebody's interested in, or somebody wants to like have you write something on spec. So I would think in both those scenarios, the first thing you'd want to do is like go to a lawyer and be like, hey, this studio or production company wants to buy my script. And then like I'm curious, like what does that agreement or contract look like? And
right.
what are those like next steps?
Yeah, that's right. That's a good time to go to the lawyer when there is interest and there's a deal that's on the table. Because lawyers and also agents and managers, of course, will have a better sense of what's market, not just in terms of dollars, but also in terms of rights that you're giving away or that you're retaining. And, making sure it's right size to the type of project, who the buyer is or who's optioning it, the writer and what success they've had. So it's good to have a sense of the market, because like lawyers work with multiple clients. So they get a sense of the market. Same with agents and managers. They're doing deals all the time. So their best use, that group of advisors, is on, what's market and what's fair, what's reasonable, kind of keep you sane, that you don't, your eyes aren't too big, that you think that you're entitled to a lot more than you are when it's your first deal, but also to make sure you're being a good advocate for yourself and not just so starstruck that you're getting a first deal that you're not an advocate for yourself to make sure that the terms are at least market. So it's kind of can serve as a calibration of what to expect. And then I guess I should mention there's also um, advisors called business managers, which I don't know if you've heard of, but a business manager is a kind of bookkeeping, financial accountant type who often, tracks royalties and royalty statements, or, shares of back end on film and TV projects, and, collects all of that. Oftentimes they're paying bills for the talent. They're paying other advisors that, who've worked on the project. So as you get a little bigger and you're generating more revenue from the entertainment industry, many talent will have a business manager who kind of manage the financial aspect of working in the industry.
Okay, that's good to know. I was wondering as well, just if you would tell us a little bit about why you went into how you got into entertainment law, and if you have a background, like, have you always just been a cinephile, or yeah, just about why that?
I kind of fell into it, really. My core practice areas are corporate, commercial, and intellectual property. And so I just started doing more transactional intellectual property work and seeing a concentration in, the sports and entertainment area. And so we just started kind of, marketing it more, and we're trying to increase our profile in the space as we were seeing that we were doing more and more of these deals. And once you do a few deals, you start to get referrals. You do good work on them, and then people refer you new clients, or they see your work on the other side of the deal, and you start to build a brand in the space. So it really kind of happened organically over time. I didn't go out and seek it. There are definitely pros and cons to working in the industry. If you're particularly on the talent side, there's a lot of competition to land talent as clients. So there's always somebody whispering in in talent's ears, "Oh, you should work with my person, or you should meet my person." So it's a very competitive area, and when you are working with, A-list celebrities, they can have things, legal needs that come up middle of the night, on weekends, on holidays. I mean, I can't tell you how many Thanksgiving days I've been on conference calls about a legal matter for a celebrity that, needed to be handled and couldn't wait. So there are definitely some drawbacks to it. It's certainly an exciting area. It's very neat to work on a project and then see it come to life months or sometimes years later. It is very rewarding to work with people who are creative and have great ideas and do good work, and are really providing, entertainment to the masses that people appreciate and remember for their whole lives sometimes. So it's an exciting industry to be in, but it can be tough at other times.
Yeah, you have to be on call. It sounds like.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're
And you're dealing with like crazy stuff, like somebody gets their phone hacked, and their email's been spoofed, or, some private pictures have been, hacked or leaked, or somebody took pictures of them, that
Be so scary.
doing something that they don't want made public. Lots of things, household issues with people in the house. I mean, you can't make up some of the stuff. I mean, we've had clients who have people shaking them down, saying they have pictures of their private parts, and or they're saying they have pictures of them doing drugs or something crazy. And so all of these things, when you're a public figure, your brand is public. Anything that could tarnish it, whether it's real and something from the past, or whether it's, made up, which is becoming, a bigger and bigger risk these days with deep fakes and AI.
Yeah.
And we've had clients who've had their faces superimposed and, pornography. I mean, there is just just as much creative talent as in the entertainment space. There's creative talent in sort of the shake somebody down or threaten them or try to take down their career space. There's a lot of creative strategies on that side of the ledger too. So always something coming up.
So scary to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Aviva, you were gonna ask.
I was gonna ask, I saw on your, on your website, that you're part of the academy, right? So you're on since for a while now, and I was just wondering, if you could hear more about that, like being a part of that.
Yeah, just I mean, everybody knows of it as the Emmys, right? That's the organization that puts on the Emmys and gives out Emmy awards. But the membership is really for professionals in the industry, and I forget what the exact criteria for membership are. But obviously, either you're an actor or involved in the industry servicing it, or creative talent somehow. And so you're just you get regular updates on what's going on in the industry. You get materials for reviewing Emmy nominees. So it's just an industry organization that is there to support and advance the industry. And so there are a lot of entertainment industry professionals in it, even if you're not on screen talent.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. I would kind of like to go back to talking more a little bit about like the specifics of agreements and like contracts for like when you're first breaking in. Like, for example, both Aviva and I are writing on script or on spec right now for some producers. And so I think I'm kind of curious to hear like, when you're writing on spec for something and you're not getting paid, Aviva, I think you were smarter than me and that you got yourself
my dad's
a shopping agreement. Yeah.
Get a contract.
Your dad's a great lawyer.
Yeah. My dad knows.
Yeah, but I think,
that's how we connected.
and I'm sure that our listeners, like most of our audience, they're all writers who are just breaking into the industry. And I just think this is something we don't know to think about, especially if it's not presented to us. So I'm kind of curious, like, when you find yourself in a writing on spec situation, is it normal for like the producers, the production company to present you with some type of agreement that you should be signing, saying that you're writing something on spec for them, especially if the idea is like their idea and it's tied to some IP that they own? That's kind of an interesting scenario that I have found myself in. But I'm kind of curious to know, like, or should us as writers, should we have our own like contract or shopping agreement that we ask someone to sign when they approach us to like, do something on spec for them?
Well, I think everybody handles it differently, or not everybody handles it differently, but there are different approaches. And I would be surprised if somebody's asking you to write something on spec that they're not, or they're not asking you to sign anything at that point at all. Is that what you're experiencing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that is one approach. And in that scenario, what typically happens is they'll review it after you've submitted it and decide if they're interested in, if they want it. And if they do, that's when you'll get the paperwork. And at that point, they're going to ask you to assign your rights to it to them. Some people want something signed up front that you're doing it kind of as a work for hire, and that if it's it's based on their IP, and that they'll own it when you submit it, and if they plan to use it, they'll pay you, or they'll cut a deal with you at that time. So I think there's different approaches depending on what their internal processes are and who they are and how many times they've been burned before. Much of what happens in law, in any industry, really is based on what somebody's gotten screwed before on something, right? And so they change how they do things to make sure I'm never going to let that happen to me again, or we're never going to let that happen to us again. So people have different risk tolerances and different scars from what's happened to them in the past. So, yeah, because remember, the default rule in intellectual property, absent something in writing, is that the person who creates it owns it. So if you're creating the script, you own it.
Yeah, that was
Absent something in writing.
that is
saying
like the
something different.
question I have that I'll be like vague on this and we can maybe edit it later. But because like in the case of my scenario, I wrote something on spec last year for these producers. I didn't have any agreement with them, which I definitely like look back on that and regret that. But I also think I just trusted that they knew what they were doing, that like, yeah, like I would have signed something when it was like actually going to be sold and like shopped around. But from what I've heard from them, they have not I don't know if they necessarily like shopped it around in a and how formal of a way, but like they've definitely had it read through studios and actresses and other producers or directors. But the like core idea of it is based off of like a book that they like, have the IP rights to, but it's the actual story of what I wrote is not what the book is. Like it's definitely like one little like part of it and like the character names. And so now I most recently checked in with them and asked like if are they still pursuing it, because now it's been a year and nothing has happened. And so I've been wondering for myself, like I wrote this. It's like 120 pages that I wrote. Like, don't I own this now? And can I, if they're not going to do anything with it, can I now take it to like other people and like, either shop it around or just like use it for myself, however I want to? And like, I'm not sure how to like navigate that conversation with them.
Well, it is hard without kind of knowing, digging into the specifics about what you created really is based on, or derivative work, as we call it, of existing IP that they have. Doesn't mean they own it. It just might mean that you can't use you can't
Yeah.
use it or exploit it in the way you want. But I think you can certainly use it as a sample of your work and the quality of your writing, as long as you're appropriately caveating that and you're not under some sort of confidentiality agreement not to
Yeah.
disclose what you created or what the guidelines of the spec project or request were. But it could be used for to show the quality of your work and the caliber and the type of projects you do as part of your portfolio. But just keeping in mind, if there's anything confidential there, that you would want to, either caveat that or get an NDA yourself if you're permitted to under the terms of your own confidentiality obligations to whoever engaged you to do that. And then, and it's possible that you could swap out or redact, or change names or something if the rest of it is not derivative. Meaning, if the only thing kind of derivative of the pre-existing work is the characters, then if it's character names and not sort of their attributes too. I mean, we're getting into weeds a little here, but you could repurpose it if you take out sort of the elements that are derivative of existing IP. But I wouldn't kind of do that on your own without consulting an entertainment attorney on that. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, for listeners, like, I mean, I imagine your recommendation when we're writing on spec is to like, probably you recommend having some kind of contract. Like, is that?
I mean, I'm a contract fan.
Yeah.
Lawyer, but in general, it is the way to get on the same page and make sure you're on the same page and make sure everybody feels, okay, this is what I'm signing up for. I understand how this is going to work, what the process is. Maybe you're not agreeing on financial or economic terms yet. I mean, as the writer, your goal is I want to write something that is absolutely amazing, that they cannot live without, that they're so excited about, that they're throwing money at.
Mhm.
Um, so, if it's okay if you're not agreeing on sort of the financial implications or the details necessarily, because you might not know what it's worth until you write it. Right? You might not know how good this is until you've sort of gotten in there, rolled up your sleeves and created something that you're super proud of and that, fits the mark for them exactly. And you'll know from their reaction and what changes they don't request to it. So sometimes that you won't know how valuable it is until you've created it and seen their reaction and how other people are responding to it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think too, maybe like at least this is what I felt, and I'm sure some of our listeners feel too, with like when you get this like first opportunity, that it just feels so exciting that I think for me, part of why I didn't even ask is just because of fear of like asking would mean like, oh, like I don't know that like,
For you
you
being
know.
like they say, you know what? On second thought, I don't want to work with you because you asked
Right.
for work.
Yeah.
I don't see that happen too often. I mean, it'd be one thing if you get entrenched on it, meaning if you're entrenched in your position and it's just not part of their process and they aren't willing to do it. Um, Sometimes people are in a hurry. I mean, frankly, the spectrum of reasons that people don't do contracts, when you think they might or should, really is a long, broad spectrum. Some people just don't want to take the time to do it. Some people don't want to pay their lawyer to have to prepare something. They don't want to deal with back and forth of comments and negotiations. They may have somebody else who's willing to jump on it and not requiring any kind of red tape or
Right.
bureaucracy. So I don't think there's ever any harm in asking, but you just got to be prepared. Are you comfortable if they say no? Um, so I don't think there's ever any harm in asking or just understanding the process. You can just ask and what's your process?
Yeah.
How do you typically do this? How do you typically handle this?
Yeah. Do you have any advice that we haven't covered yet, just for writers breaking in? Like, is there anything else we should be thinking about that comes to mind?
Well, I mean, the WGA registration of scripts, I think, is pretty important. Not everybody knows about that. I mean, did y'all know about it?
I
Yeah.
did,
Yeah.
but we
Okay.
weren't really sure. I think in recent years, some people say like the minute you write something, you own it. It's unnecessary to pay these companies, So I don't know, but I do know.
Well, you do. The minute you write something, you own it, but it's good to have a timeline record, right? With an official, reputable organization, right?
Yeah.
So it also shows that you care. You care about protecting intellectual property, which if I were, a production company or a film studio or a network, I would want people who care about IP. So I mean, that's the way I look at it, that it shows that you understand how things work and that you care, that you're investing in something that you want to protect. So I think that's probably the most important message for a writer is to just make sure you're either registering the copyright or registering with WGA or both.
Yeah.
Um, it's nobody's going to think bad of you for doing that or thinking that you're just an idiot. So it's low cost, so it's worth doing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like I always put a copyright and register it with the WGA whenever I finish something that I'm like, this is completed. I'm gonna, especially if I'm gonna submit it to festivals or contests or something. I feel like I don't know, maybe I learned that in school, but
Yeah, you want to you don't have to, but you can stamp on the title page,
yeah,
registered with
I remember.
WGA East or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I had a question as well. Just I was curious. So it sounds like you work mostly with like, like writers, actors, whatever. Have you worked on feature films as a lawyer, or are you usually just representing that writer or client? Like, have you been the lawyer on a
You
film?
mean in production counsel? We don't
Yeah,
do much.
maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a little bit of that in the documentary space and a little bit in films, but generally we're on the side of the individual talent. So the actor, the writer, the director. We have done some production company work, but it's not the bulk of what we do is representation.
Nice.
Yeah. I know. I'm kind of curious too to hear a little bit about your thoughts on like the past strike and just like I feel like the big
That
thing,
was a
right?
long one,
I
right? It
know,
was
yeah.
Really long.
well, I mean, what's fascinating about it is just that it's newer issues, right? AI was a big component of that. So
And
it's,
streaming,
the
right?
industry, yeah, the industry evolves quickly. I mean, it's not so much in music. I feel like music is the corner of entertainment law that's like really slow to change.
Hmm.
Actually, in general, the industry is slow to change. But I found that aspect of it kind of interesting of where things were going to land on AI. And nothing's really settled, right? AI is evolving all the time, and the laws are having to try and keep up, as is the sort of the marketplace and negotiating contract terms. So I found that to be the most interesting aspect of the strikes and in general as a topic in entertainment, seeing where that's going to go. Um, it's funny to me about AI. I mean, how much is there talk on in your world and your network about AI? Is it a big
Yeah,
concern?
I think so. I hear about it a lot. Yeah, we just don't want to be replaced. And
Yeah, I feel like people just like, use it to write things all the time or like transcribe things. But actually it just kind of made me think about like a question for you would be like, okay, so could I use ChatGPT or something to be like, write me a shopping agreement for like my producers? But then like, I guess I would have to read that through and like hope that I understand like language and terms. And like, I feel like I would still want a lawyer to read through
You
something.
should. You should. I have only had one client submit me an AI contract that they ginned up on whatever
Yeah.
site or app. And it was weird because it got, some things correct and the other things just made no sense. And so I think that being like it will get refined probably over time. But yeah, legal AI and legal is a thing. And I mean, we've also had some discussions internally. Are there any reliable resources we could use to generate a first draft of something that we could then customize as a way of saving time and money? So I think as that aspect of AI evolve, that it'll get better and better, hopefully over time. So that may be a possibility, but my advice would be, if you're going to generate one, have a lawyer look at it or ask a lawyer, would it be cheaper for me to give you a form to review, or do you have kind of your own tried and true form that you would customize for this? And would that cost less? Excuse me. This is, of course, if you're not paying the percentage fee arrangement that many entertainment lawyers already use. So that question would be, irrelevant to that. But yeah, AI, it's so funny because AI just seemed to just land on us like
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's a thing. But when I think about it, it's like just software, right?
Yeah.
Software's been around forever that has algorithms to analyze data and find, commonalities or connections. And so it's just software. But we
Yeah.
talk about it like this is just new technology that just kind of seemed to descend on us and be in the news everywhere. But it is just a type of software computing.
yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. I had a question. I know we'll wrap up really soon, but we were wondering, okay, so the dream of our podcast one day is we will have merch. So
Oh
we're
yeah.
wondering if this is kind of a question just as well, like, for example, like I've seen companies make like screenwriting or movie merch, and I wonder they probably don't have like legal permission to like reference a lot. Like I'm wondering where the line is if like
Yeah.
I've seen other brands like make merch where it's a reference to a specific rom-com. And we all know that it could even have a word from the rom-com. Like, an example would be like Princess Diaries merch. I've seen that all over the place. And I'm just wondering, yeah, like where's the line? Like, are we allowed to reference other rom-coms? Are we allowed to use a line from a famous rom-com, or is that copyrighted?
This is a kind of a murky area, right? It
Yeah.
depends on how much you're using, how identifiable it is, how much the owner of that cares. Are
Yeah.
t-shirt that gets silk screened in somebody's garage? Probably not. Uh, if you're going to start making a lot of money off of it, you may find yourself on the other end of a cease and desist letter or demand. So I think, it depends on what you're doing and the scale of it and how much you're using. I haven't seen a ton of, when you say screenwriter merch, are you talking about taking lines from projects or what?
Like lines from a script, right? Like I feel
Yeah.
like we've seen that.
Okay, like here's an example. What have we seen, Isabel? Like a certain line.
Well, we can use the example. We won't say the name of the company. I mean, they don't exist anymore, right? But like I have a sweatshirt that says the shop around the corner on it, which is like the name of the woman's business from You've Got Mail. And it's like in the
That's
font
right.
of it, right? But it's like, I feel like, I don't know, that it kind of feels a little bit like a logo, but people definitely recognize it when they read it off my sweatshirt. But then like, I don't know, we
Right.
wonder about stuff like that. But then I'm trying to think of a specific line, like,
Yeah, I feel like I have seen that.
Like you had me at hello type thing?
Yeah.
something like that, yeah. Or like
Yeah.
as if from, I don't know, Legally Blonde or like something like, but maybe even as we say this, maybe only like that is kind of niche for people like us who might like really recognize.
I'm not sure as if everybody's going to recognize that as being from,
Oh, that's from Clueless.
yeah, I've heard of Clues. I have not seen it, but I think it depends on how much you're using of it, how recognizable it is, and how much they're going to police it.
Yeah.
And technically, if it's identifiable and it comes from, a copyrighted work, then it would arguably be covered by their copyright.
Yeah. Yeah. I've just seen that. Like I've seen multiple places. I keep talking about Princess Diaries, but that's just like a very iconic film for us growing up. And, Genovia, like the country that's made up in that world. Like, I've seen a lot of merch. I don't want to like name call any companies, but I'm wondering like, ooh, I don't know if I would do that, even though I want to buy it. But as a brand, I'm a little scared to like make Genovia merch, for example.
I think you're right though. It might just like reach a point where like it's fine until like somebody who really cares about it like becomes aware of it and then sends you a cease and desist. And then obviously you'd have to like stop at that point, I'm assuming.
You owe them money.
The thing about getting a cease and desist letter is that sometimes they truly just want you to stop and they'll move along their way. And so a lot of people's strategy is I'm going to rip this off or do this until somebody comes after me. If that's truly all it is that we need you to stop and you stop and you're good, then that's great. But many times it goes beyond that. And it's not just enough that you've stopped. They want, a share of the revenue or all of the revenue that you've made on it, or they want damages. So the problem is you can never really predict how aggressive somebody's going to be. And if they want a lot of money and you can't afford to pay them and they sue you, then you've got a lawsuit you have to deal with. So it's, again, it goes back to, we've talked a lot about people's risk tolerance, right? So people who are making this merch, it's also about their risk tolerance. And are they just going to stop if somebody comes after them or, and declare bankruptcy if they can't suit? You just want to make sure everybody knows that it doesn't always stop with a cease and desist that says, please stop doing this. Many times it does, but other times it doesn't. So just gotta factor that in.
I think we'll be cautious and not like copy a line from
we can use our own lines.
Yeah, or our business cards. I don't know, maybe we should not share this, but our business cards say like I'd chase you to the airport, which is like what we just made, like making fun of like the trope of, that kind of thing. at least I've never seen that from like, it's an original thing that we wrote.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe something.
Yeah. I feel like we can
That's totally doable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rather than like a line from Legally Blonde or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We should wrap up. Yeah, we would love to ask you a few like rom-com questions.
Yeah, just like some fun, quick question.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now preparing for rapid fire questions.
The first question is just, what is your favorite rom-com and why?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a huge rom-com fan, but I
That's
do
okay.
have some that I absolutely love. I'd probably say Hitch is one of my favorite.
That is a good one.
I, I just, I don't know. It was funny and it had the multiple storylines going where he's helping others and then he's in his own rom-com of his own. I just really liked it. I thought it was entertaining. I mean, what's his name? The guy from King of Queens. I'm forgetting his name.
What is his name?
Yeah, what is his name?
The mall cop guy.
Yeah, the mall cop guy.
I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he's hilarious, and he's hilarious in that movie. That was just a great one all around, just entertaining. And I've seen it a gazillion times because it's just so entertaining.
Yeah,
that's probably my favorite one.
So good.
Isn't he an entertainment lawyer in that too?
No,
See, I don't
he's a
know.
fixer. You're talking about Will Smith?
No, the guy, because he has a crush on his like client or something, right?
Like a wealth management guy or something.
Oh, that's what he is. Yeah, he's a finance manager.
Electric Cold.
This guy.
Yeah, that movie is so charming. I love it. Okay, we're not going to ask you a writer question. We usually ask writers writing rom-com tropes. But do you have a favorite outfit that you've seen in a rom-com?
I can't. I think the only one that stands out to me, and this is because I kind of like just don't pay attention to that sort of stuff. I'm usually focused on kind of the storyline and the characters, but I really like that outfit that Julia Roberts wore to the horse polo match in Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
Like on pantsuit with white polka dots, and she had a matching hat. I thought that was adorable.
Yeah.
But I'm a polka dot fan. I don't wear polka dots. I just happen to like polka dots. So it's the only one that kind of comes to mind. But I'm sure there have been fabulous ones. That's the one that stands out to me.
No, that's a good one.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's been a while, but I think I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you have a favorite like line or a moment from a rom-com? Speaking of us.
Yeah.
Merch based off these.
I don't know that I have a specific line. I don't know. I really like The Proposal too, which was Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
I mean, Ryan Reynolds is nice to look at in anything, but that was a fun one because the whole immigration, defrauding the immigration INS on visa, and I don't know, the going to Sitka, Alaska, or wherever he was from. I don't know. I don't remember a specific line from that, but Betty White was in it, so I'm sure there were some good one-liners from her. But I just don't have one in my head. But
that one
is a lot of good moments.
I love The Proposal. Also seen both of the films you've mentioned. Yeah, I've seen so many.
I like Notting Hill a lot too. What do most people like that you interview? What is there like a one that's a front runner for most folks, or?
I'd say, well, When Harry Met Sally, I think, and just like the whole Nora Ephron.
Yeah.
And so like, Sleepless in Seattle is my favorite. Also Isabel, your favorite is you like 10 Things I Hate About You, right?
10 Things I Hate About You. Yeah, we get that.
I think I saw that one. Yeah.
That one's really good.
Yeah, you should watch that one.
Yeah. I'd say Nora Ephron ones, or
How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I feel like we get a lot too.
It's classic.
Yeah.
The outfits. And a lot of these you're in New York, right? Like a lot of these films are in New York. I feel like they make New York seem so dreamy. It's
so true.
Yeah. It's like half dreamy and half terrifying, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, rom-com's a great genre. I mean, it's just, it kind of hits the spot in many ways. I don't watch a ton of it because I like suspense. I like drama. I like, kind of edge of your seat content. But I do like, good rom-com when there is one. And it's usually very driven by who's in it, right? I mean, the actors, I feel like, really make that genre. You have to be really good at
Yeah,
it.
she should go see Left on 10th in
I don't know.
New York.
Yesterday we interviewed Delia Ephron, Nora Ephron's sister.
Yeah.
Delia is still, living in New York and writing, and her Broadway debut just happened.
Oh,
Yeah, but it's kind
nice.
of like it's sort of like a dark romance with a little bit of comedy sprinkled in, right?
We
So,
haven't seen it, but if we were in New York, we would see it.
yeah.
Okay. So is most of the work you both do in the rom-com genre?
We're trying.
Yeah,
We're
that's
not,
what we.
neither of us have made like a sale yet, but we're trying to break in, and we both tend to write rom-coms and comedies.
Just
So.
got to keep at it. I mean, there's such a demand for good content these days. I mean, with all the expansion into streaming platforms, there's tons of opportunities, and the demand for content is so high. So just keep at it,
Thank you. Yeah,
because once you
that's
get
inspiring.
one, just like on-screen talent, right? Once you get one role that kind of puts you on the map or one success, then I don't want to say you can write your own ticket, but it's so much easier after you have one credit or success. So just keep at it.
To wrap it up, so just two more questions. Do you have any rom-coms you'd recommend, or any films in general that you've seen that that our listeners should watch soon?
I don't get out as much as I should. I'm very much chained to my desk. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen anything great recently. I could talk regular TV.
Yeah.
Some really good shows. And that's where most of my entertainment comes from, like some of these great series. Obviously Yellowstone was amazing. Anybody on the planet who has not seen Yellowstone yet, I would recommend it. I really enjoyed The Diplomat. With Kerry Russell. It's a Netflix series. That one's really good. I'm enjoying Lioness, which is an MTV. Well,
No, I've never heard of it.
Taylor Sheridan. Do you know who Taylor Sheridan is? He's the guy behind Yellowstone. He clearly has a multi project deal because he did Lioness is another one, and Tulsa King, which is a Sylvester Stallone, is the star of that. It's another Taylor Sheridan show that's been pretty good. There's also a sci-fi one called Silo that is really, really good. It's kind of an apocalyptic one where, I guess there's been a nuclear disaster, and so people live in these just giant underground silos. And so that one is fascinating as well. So there's so much good content out there. Not necessarily, I just don't watch a ton of rom-coms, but some really good dramas and suspenses. Oh, the one more, Blackbird. Have you heard of that one?
No.
It is a true story. It's an Apple TV series, I think, about a serial killer. Who went to prison, but they couldn't get him to confess where a lot of the bodies were, and they were unfortunately, young girls. And so they recruited this drug dealer guy to go undercover for them in prison with the serial killer to try and befriend him and get him to confess to where the bodies were buried so that the families could have closure. And then they were going to commute his drug dealing sentence. But the serial killer's in one of these like supermax, really dangerous prisons. And so the drug dealer's like, do I go in there or not? And it's just the acting, the writing and the acting, she's top notch. So I would highly recommend that one as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we love TV and we love other non-rom-com genres.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, we don't only watch rom-coms.
Yeah, we'll say a lot of we always reminisce about kind of the older-ish rom-coms because it's hard to find good ones these days, honestly.
Yeah,
We still celebrate the genre and everything. But
for
yeah.
sure.
So lastly, yeah, like where can we follow your career? And if anyone wants to work with you, like, yeah, just how can that happen?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, email is always best. You're free to give out my email to anybody who needs help. I'm always happy to help. Like supporting folks that are trying to make it in the industry. It is a tough industry, but also very rewarding and interesting, and never a dull day in this industry. So absolutely happy to help anybody who needs some support.
Thank you. We appreciate that. And we appreciate your time. This was honestly super helpful. And I think it'll be very like enlightening and useful for a lot of our audience who, maybe just are wondering these questions themselves and don't even know where to begin. So I think this can be a really helpful, like, I don't know, episode for people who are kind of like, how do I even go about asking for a contract?
Yeah.
So
It's great. I'm glad y'all do this. I'm sure people really appreciate it, and please keep me posted on how you're both doing too.
yeah, I'm sure you might be hearing
as
from
well.
Love to work with you and have a need for an entertainment lawyer. That's the truth.
All right. Well, I'm here when you need me.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
All right. Take care. Have a good weekend and happy
Right.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This has been an episode of When Isabel Metaviva. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to stay up to date with our episodes, please subscribe. Bonus points if you leave us a positive review. And you can follow us on Instagram at whenisabelmetaviva. And we're still on Twitter, but we're also on Bluesky. We're kind of all over the place right now. So, so just follow us and, just everything will be in the show notes.
Yeah.
And just don't forget to write and watch as many rom-coms as possible. And we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much.
Bye.